Hey guys, this is Giles. So I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today than I usually do. I don't really have a set agenda. I'm just going to kind of babble a bit and ramble on, and if you guys feel like joining me along for the ride, I encourage it. If you're not in the mood, then move on to my next video. And lately I've been thinking a bit about my Sisters of Battle, or Adepta Sororitas now. Now, if you watch my channel, you know I have a very short attention span when it comes to games. I move from army to army. I have way more armies for Warhammer than my wife is comfortable with. But I'm just that way. But even with all my armies, I really seem to come back to the Sisters of Battle over and over again. I started the army back when 3rd edition was brand new. I used the codex that actually came in the 3rd edition rulebook, plus a couple of White Dwarf articles for war gear and litanies. And I really enjoyed them back in 3rd. I'd run with an Inquisitor ally, also out of the 3rd edition rulebook, and just had a lot of fun with the army. Then came the chapter approved army list, which gave me the Redemptionists. It was the birth of the Exorcist, and really enjoyed that one. I played that constantly, got a lot of victories. Then Witch Hunters came out. Now, Witch Hunters, I never could get into that book. I almost think it was more the fluff that hurt it for me, seeing the Sisters of Battle kind of taking a sidestep in their own codex and being minimized to it being more about the Inquisition. That always bothered me. So my sisters kind of started sitting in a box a little bit at that point. Then White Dwarf Codex came out. Now, at first, I was pretty irritated by it because as you guys know, I play Blood Angels, and the White Dwarf Codex there did not make me happy either. So at first I judged it, not another White Dwarf Codex. I got to haul 2 White Dwarfs around with me. They're going to mess up my rolls even worse. Played a game or two, really didn't like it. Then started to see how it worked. Got a feel for how to use my Dominions. Got a feel for how to use my Retributors. And just start playing a little bit more. And then when 6th edition hit, I just went crazy with them. I started winning dang near every single game I played with them. Beating Chaos, beating Dark Angels, beating Tau, beating Eldar, even beating Necrons. And I hate Necrons. So you guys probably already know that. They just started really kicking butt and taking names. And then we got our new codex, the digital edition, which is the one I'm currently using. It took me a while to disengage from that White Dwarf list and get into the new one, but after playing it for a while and getting the feel for it, I actually enjoy it just as much. It's a much stronger book than what most people will tell you. There's a lot of shenanigans you can play with it. It's got some blaring problems. I will completely confess to that. I'm going to just move the camera around every now and then to give you guys new stuff to look at. Problem number 1 is absolutely no anti-air. I got nothing except for allies or fortifications, and that does bother me. You can use the Forge World Avenger Strike Fighter, but that takes up a heavy slot. And to be honest, I just got no slots other than elites that I don't fill to the max every time I play them. So it's just hard for me to give that up. I'm begging GW, if you're listening to this, please give me an upgrade for my Exorcists for Skyfire, and the army will be fixed and much higher tier than most people give it credit for. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about tactics. Now, I want to be upfront in saying I am a firm believer there is not one way to play an army. For every army, there is a myriad ways to play it and be successful. Step 1 in being successful with your army is do not read internet articles on how to play your army. Do not pay attention to people who say this is the way to play the army. You play an army by buying the models that you like, the fluff that you like, the rules that you like. Get engaged with the models. Actually work in them. Get a feel for them and how they work. Build your own tactics around it. You are going to lose in the beginning. You're going to lose a lot. But the more you play with an army and the more you get a feel for it, then the stronger you will be. Okay? And that's how I play, I believe, for the sisters. I hear a lot of flack online that they're a subpar army, that they don't even come close in the ratings. In fact, I've seen some ratings on which are the strongest armies where the Sisters of Battle don't even show up on the list. But I tell you, with these girls, I go against the Eldar, I go against Wave Serpent Spam, I've gone against Knights, I've gone against everything out there, and I win, I'd guess, about 70% of my games. And I play in the Northwest, where we have a pretty strong meta up here. Some of the best gamers in the country are over here. I've met a few of them. And they still, my sisters win about 70% of their game. And I consider, with some of the failings in our army, that's a pretty good showing. So don't judge a book by what everybody else is saying about it. Go in there, tear it up, figure it out yourself, find your tactics that work, and do it. So, after saying that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what works for me. I'm not going to give you lists to use. I'm just going to tell you general tactics. First things first for me is I play my sisters very mobile. I don't get stuck in. I don't buy a lot of fortifications. Back in 6th, I'd have a bastion. But since they gave buildings hull points, I find they die too quickly. One unit of Scourges with haywire blasters, and boom, your expensive bastion's down and all your units are falling, and it's just not worth it to me. I play a lot of sisters in Rhinos and Immolators, and I don't do the Melta spam. I actually believe in mixing it up. I run Immolators with Heavy Flamers, Immolators with Multi-Meltas, I run Rhinos, lots of squads, moving around, grabbing those Maelstrom objectives, giving me the flexibility to get where I need to be when I need to be. If you ever think about playing Sisters of Battle or against them, one thing you need to understand about them is they rock at the short-range firefights. That is their strength, the range 12 fight. Their standard weapon is the same as Space Marines. They have the power armor and the bolter, rapid fire, strength 4, AP 5, like everybody knows. And they have the same ballistic skills as Space Marine, ballistic skill 4. So they do very well at that rapid fire range. Now, when it comes to special and heavy weapons, they have almost nothing with long range. The longest range special weapon they can carry is literally a heavy bolter. The only other heavy weapons they get is the Multi-Melta, which is range 24, and the Heavy Flamer. For special weapons, they only get Flamers, Melta guns, and Storm Bolters. Once again, relatively short range, medium range weapons. So that's another reason I like to run mine very mobile in the vehicles. And this is kind of touchy with them because they don't do well in close combat. I mean, we have dedicated close combat units, the Penitent Engines, the Repentia, but I play mainly with just stock Battle Sisters. So I set my opponent up. I use targets to lure him into where I want him, and then I'll run multiple squads in there to hit him. Do as much damage as I can, because when you get in there and you do the hit, you got to do enough damage to cripple your opponent. You cannot just kill 1 or 2 guys and then be set up for an assault. You got to do the damage. So I use multiple squads of sisters supporting themselves. That's why I like my Heavy Flamer Immolators too, because they can go in there and really do a lot of damage themselves. Now, one of the things about sisters, for those who don't know, we have 2 special abilities. First is the entire army has a 6+ invulnerable save, which is pretty flippin' nifty if you ask me, but is by no means game changing. I have lost plenty of sisters where that has made no difference whatsoever. Yet I've also played games where that 6+ save has just made a unit unkillable just from sheer dumb luck. It does happen. So it is a pretty nifty ability. Our other ability is our Axe of Faith, which is a special ability that each unit has that can use once per game. It works off of a leadership test. And there's tricks to get more than one use, but for the most part, it's just a one-time deal. And you got to understand those acts of faith and how they work when you're setting up your opponent, like when I was talking. Lure them in to where you want them to be, hit them with overwhelming force, use the axe, bring them down. You're going to lose your rhinos. It happens. Hopefully not on first turn so they get first blood, but just realize everything in your army is kind of, I don't want to say expendable, but don't get hooked on any one thing. It's about the synergy of the units working together to bring down an opponent. I'm going to go through my usual choices real quick. Now for HQ, the guy you're looking at, Uriah, is usually my warlord. He is a type of HQ that gives support to everyone around him. He has a fearless bubble and a counterattack bubble. I like to keep him kind of towards my backfield, giving me a nice fearless bubble for when sisters fall back into it, they can pop back in. Also, that counterattack can leave weaker armies tempted not to charge, things like orcs, because they charge in. My sisters get to make all their snap fires, plus they get the bonus for assault. And if he's in the unit, they get their war hymns, which can really be battle changing. But not something where you can rely on, because you need a leadership test, and priests don't have the best leadership in the world, so when you really need them, they're not going to go off. Alright? There is one trick I use to help with that, and that is by getting a secondary priest, just a nobody priest, and giving him litanies of faith. That allows one ability to go off automatically. Or, sorry, not one ability. It makes all war hymns and acts of faith work automatically without a leadership test. So that's a little cheat you can use for that if you're really counting on it. He costs 25 points, so the litanies are like 15 points. So it's really a small investment, and it really kind of nails in. If you have a strategy that really depends on it, you can use it. For example, in my... Well, let me get to heavies and I'll talk about that. So that's my standard for HQ. In bigger games where I have the points, I do like, Celestine. She is a little tricky to use, but very good at what she does. She is a jump troop heavy flamer, running around with Seraphim. Now, she's good at augmenting the Seraphim, giving them fearless. She's also very high leadership, very high initiative, very high weapon skill. Her weapon is strength 5, AP 3. So your average character, she can go in and really beat them down. What you got to worry about is anything with a 2+ armor save and strength 6. Because she's only toughness 3, she is not a Eternal Warrior. If she dies, she does get a chance of coming back. One time only. But you don't want to test that if you don't want to. So you got to kind of pick your fights. So if you're throwing her against, basic Space Marine Captain or, something along those lines, she'll do great. Keep her away from Tyranids. Keep her away from Greater Demons. Keep her away from Terminators. Keep her away from anything that has that strength 6 that ignores armor. Because if she goes in there, she's gone. But she's got a 4+ invulnerable. If she takes 1 wound at strength 6, she's got a 50% chance of surviving. But statistically, if you take 2 wounds, she's gone out of the fight. So be careful on where you put her. I've seen people just want to throw her into close combat, running her by herself, and just, one assault cannon rending hit, she's gone. So I don't run her that way. I put her with a squad of Seraphim, and I use her to augment them, and she does great. So I do use her, but usually only in larger games. I don't use the Canoness very much. Nothing against her. She's a good little model. She has her place in the army, but just there are better choices. If I'm in a campaign or a tournament or something that does not allow independent characters, and she's my only choice. And I don't put a lot of points in her. When I do use her, I Combi Flamer. I do have one with the Fusion Pistol Power Sword, but I literally never use her. If I need a Canoness, I use this model. Just with the Combi Flamer, I use her to augment. Maybe she'll man the quad gun to give the extra ballistic skill or something like that. But I don't generally use a canoness. For my troops choices, I use just standard sister squads. As I've already said, I run several of them, usually 3 or 4 at least. My sister squads I usually run at 10 strong in Rhinos with a Heavy Flamer. And their job is to provide that overwhelming firepower at medium range to just bring down an opponent. I'll weaken them with some of my other units, or I'll lure them in and have a couple of these squads jump out together to put the pain on the unit, and their goal is to wipe it out. If I'm really in desperate straits, I can pop their Act of Faith, which gives me the preferred enemy. You can't count on it, because right when you need it, you'll fail your leadership and it's gone. But it is a pretty nice little gift to the unit. It does help. And they're your only troops choice. And so I just run 10 strong Heavy Flamer because I want them to be mobile. I don't mess with heavy bolters much or multi-meltas at all with them, just because I want these girls mobile. I want them moving. If I'm sitting still, I'm in trouble. And next is my fast attack. I actually didn't bring any fast attack models out, so I'll just talk about them. Seraphim, they're my jump troops. They each have 2 pistols, and what I see is people who are new to the army will try to use them as an assault unit, and they are not. They should stay out of close combat as much as possible. Their strength is the short-range firefight as well, just like the rest of my sisters. I'll put Celestine with them. I give them 2 sisters with twin hand flamers. I deep strike in if I can close to a unit that's vulnerable. Put Celestine and those hand flamers up front. If I'm getting in range of my flamers where I'm getting a good number of models under those templates, I pop their Act of Faith, which is Shred, so I get to reroll 2 wounds. Even though the hand flamers are only strength 3, when you have 4 templates landing on a unit that's bunched up, so you're getting lots of hits, and Shred goes off, so I'm re-rolling those wounds. Following that by 8 Battle Sisters with 2 strength 4 shots each from their pistols, so that's 16 more strength 4 shots that re-roll to wound. That's a lot of wounds, plus Celestine's Heavy Flamer. I have seen them bring entire squads just down with that one initial jump. And then after that, I just keep them moving, keep them firing. They do tend to attract a lot of attention, so I really try hard to get a good alpha strike when they first show up. I don't start them on the table because my opponents will beat in on them and take them out. If you've ever played me, you know to worry about my Seraphim. But they are a strong unit. I usually bring only one, and only if I'm bringing Celestine. You know, they're a unit I save just for larger games. My next fast attack choice that I use are my Dominions. Now, I have 2 types of Dominions I use. I either go with the 4 Heavy Flamers outflanking to go after heavy concentrations of troops, like if my opponent is running orcs, or they run a lot of small Tyranids or Horde type armies, Imperial Guard without the tanks, things like that. But in 7th edition, I've been running more the 5-man squad with 4 Melta guns in the multi-Melta armed Immolator. Now, what I do with these depends on, do I have first turn or do I have second turn? If I have first turn, I will put them in my Immolators straight riding the 24-inch line, or whatever my deployment is, right up in the middle of my deployment zone, right up against the line. Have my opponent place. I then immediately scout move my Immolators as close to the targets that I have for them, so that I'm ready, and I just pray to heck that he does not steal the initiative. Although, to be honest, I cheat and bring Codius a lot. He's 100 points. If they do roll that 6, they have to re-roll it. So that pretty much guarantees me that if I win the roll, they're going to go first. So I don't worry too much about my scout move. Now, I have each of them pick an important target to my opponent, whether it be Lehman Russ, a bunker, something important to them. Annihilation barges I seem to be going after a lot. I charge them right after them with the scout move. On my first turret, I move the immolator 6 inches closer, pop my sisters out, move their 6 inches, do everything I can to get that opponent within 6 inches of the Meltas. I've even done this to Imperial Knights successfully. Hit them with those 4 Meltas. If they are a skimmer or anything with Jink, I'll go ahead and use their Act of Faith, which gives them the ignore cover. So you have 4 Melty guns plus the multi-Melta from the immolator coming in, ignoring cover saves, and they pretty much just knock out whatever they go after. Turn 1, first blood, important unit to my opponent is gone. Now they may shield them. It doesn't always work, especially if they kind of see what's coming. They might place them someplace where I can't get to them. But they can almost always get to something. Something valuable. Get you that first blood. The downside of that is they're dead after that. That is a throwaway. That's why there's only 5 of them. I don't give them a veteran. I do not give them weapon upgrades on the veteran because point for point, I don't think it's worth it because the unit's going to die. If you really want to get that one more Melta and you have the points and get the Combi Melta, that's whatever rocks for you. But I usually don't, and I usually don't need to. I've had these girls walk in and blow up Imperial Knights with 1 volley of shooting. Hell, I had one time they blew up an Imperial Knight, which scattered and blew up the Knight next to it. So they're a great alpha strike unit. But just don't get upset when they die. Because you know what? They're going to die, period. Your opponent's going to see them, is going to freak out, and is going to send enough firepower to kill them no matter where you put them. So you might as well get that alpha strike, the big bada bang, as soon as they're out of the gates, and just be ready to clean up the mess with the rest of your army. Although I have had them survive before, by sheer luck and miracles and that wonderful 6+ save we get. But just don't count on it. That's pretty much all I run for fast, is I usually run 2 of those Dominion Squads and the unit of Seraphim in larger games. Now onto my heavy choices. Now, for heavies, there's several choices. You get your Penitent Engines, your Exorcists, Retributors. I normally run a unit of 10 Retributors with 4 Heavy Bolters, a Semicron Imperialis, and I put them in my backfield. If I have the points, I'll get the Mage's Defense line or a Wall of Martyrs wall section just because you can't get behind it and you can't destroy it. Used to run them in a Bastion, but as I spoke earlier, I don't really do that much in 7th anymore. And that is where I normally will put Uriah Jacobson, because he gives me that nice Fearless Buzzle, what the heck's a Buzzle? Fearless bubble in the back line, so when my sisters are falling back, they become fearless and they rally. But also, he gives them the ability to have 1 additional act of faith a game. I give them a Semicron Imperialis because it does the same thing. It gives them an extra use of their act of faith. 1 second, please. And their act of faith gives them rending. So you have 4 heavy bolters sitting in the back, all with rending, 3 turns a game. And if I really feel sassy and have the points, that's where I'll put my priest with the Litany of Faith. So I don't even have to take a leadership test for those 3 tests. They are just automatically rending. They, believe it or not, are what I use to hunt down things like Wraith Knights. I have had them kill multiple Wraith Knights with just rending heavy bolters. They'll fire at Terminators. They brought them down for me on more than 1 occasion. Tau battlesuits dropping in my line. The heavy bolters make quick work of them. Just anything that's kind of a nasty threat. Especially things like Wraith Lords and Wraith Knights. I don't know why, they just really rock at killing those. I've had a lot of luck with them in that. Any monstrous creature getting hit with 16 rending shots with ballistic skill 4 is going to generally take notice, because that's, 2 automatic wounds a turn, give or take. They just do great with it. And that's if they're at range 36. Range 24, they got even more shots coming in at them. My other two Heavies choice, which I also don't have out right now, are Exorcists. Now, the Exorcist by itself, only one never works. Don't know why. It's just the roll of chance is just not strong enough to make it get its points. When I run two Exorcists supporting each other, I'm pretty much guaranteed about 6 or 7 Strength 8 AP1 shots per turn. And that will just cripple light vehicles. It will destroy elite units, take out transports. Extremely useful and relatively low point cost. If I give them upgrades, I almost always buy them a Stormbolter. And I don't expect the Stormbolter to do anything, but if they get a weapon destroyed chance, it's like a 4+ save for your Exorcist missile launcher. Because now they have to roll randomly, does it destroy the missile launcher or the Stormbolter? And who cares if it blows up the Stormbolter? But without the Stormbolter there, you only got one gun and your missile launcher's gone. So I think it's worth the penny amount of points to get the Stormbolter. Occasionally I'll get them the Loud Haulers if I think they're going to be in the back anywhere near my Heavy Bolter squad, and that's if I'm not bringing the Priest, because that allows them to reroll the Axe of Faith, which, you know, it's a little cheaper than bringing the Priest. Or I can put the Priest in another unit if I think he'll be more needed there. And I use them, the Exorcist that is, turn 1 to hunt transports. Because when you're running an army that really depends on mobility, it really helps to cramp my opponent's mobility. If I can get him on the foot and moving slow, that allows me to dominate the movement phase, and that is what you want with this army. You want to be completely in charge of the movement phase. So that's my heavy choices. That's pretty much covers most of what I do with these girls. I don't run elites. I just don't care for Celestians. Everything they can do, I can do with normal Battle Sisters for cheaper. I mean, they have an extra attack, slightly better leadership, but I don't run expensive squads with these girls. I mean, only the Heavy Bolter squad is probably my most expensive squad, and it's really not that much more expensive than a sister squad. I think, 30 more points, 20 more points, just because of the extra 2 Heavy Bolters. But, and they don't have Rhinos, so actually they're probably about the same price as my sister squads. So, I hope this has helped you. If you're interested in starting Battle Sisters, I will say it is not an army for beginners. You're going to have to be prepared to take some knocks, especially in the beginning. But it is definitely a fun army. It's a challenging army. And the list is a lot stronger than people give it credit for, especially on the line. Now, there's rumors of us getting a new book this year. I don't know how I feel about that because I finally wrapped my brain around this one and I'm doing well. But there's also talk about Plastic Sisters this year, because right now this is the only army that is still 100% metal. The only plastic kits we have is the Immolator, which is also our Rhino. And technically the Exorcist is half plastic, half metal. The rest of our line is metal or resin. So hopefully those rumors of Plastic Sisters are true, but we've literally been hearing those rumors for about 10 years now. So I am not holding my breath until I actually have picked up a box at my game store and I'm holding it in my hand. Once again, I hope this is helpful. I plan on doing a whole series of videos on these girls, talking about each unit in a bit more detail. If you're interested, keep an eye out for those. And if you also play Sisters of Battle, why don't you throw some shouts down below of things that I missed, things I didn't talk about, or tips that you use. It helps you win fights for those people who are learning the army. Thank you again for watching. If you like, then subscribe. Thank you. Goodbye.